First launched this week, the High Court finally had an application to have Shaun Abraham's appointment set aside and his predecessor Mxolisi Nxasana's appointment reinstated. Advocate Geoff Budlender, who represented the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, CASAC, argued that the court should set aside the 17.3 million golden handshake negotiated between President Jacob Zuma and Nxasana, and also declare Nxasana's removal as the NDPP as unlawful. Judgment was reserved, but joining us via Skype now is Lawson Naidoo. He's CASAC's Executive Secretary. Lawson, good morning to you and thank you so much for coming through. Now, talk to us about some main arguments that came out in court this week. A little bit confusing there with the concessions that were made by President Jacob Zuma's legal team.
Well, the thrust of the case is that the settlement agreement between the President and Mr. Nxasana should be set aside. That agreement is unlawful. It does not find any basis in law. And therefore, we ask the court to set aside that agreement. And as a result of the setting aside, what are the consequences that flow from that? And we are arguing that Mr. Nxasana should be reinstated. He should be pay back all the money that he received, the 17 million, and that Mr. Abrahams will have to revert to his previous position.
Yeah, but on what grounds are the applicants saying Nxasana's 17 million rand payout was illegal?
Because in terms of the NPA Act, if an NDPP leaves office before the term of ends, they would be entitled to a normal civil service pay and not an inflated payout as happened in this case.
So what is expected to happen going forward? I mean, with President Jacob Zuma's legal team not opposed to part of the relief that's being sought, more so that Nxasana's settlement agreement be set aside and also that he repays the golden handshake. What is expected to happen going forward?
Well, in the end, the President's team accepted that the settlement agreement is unlawful, that there is no legal basis for that agreement to have been reached. They tried to argue that it was Mr. Nxasana that asked to leave office, although we know from the facts and reported issues that the President was unhappy with him and was trying to find ways of forcing him out, which is the very reason that the President sought to hold an inquiry into Mr. Nxasana's fitness to hold office. He then withdrew that at the last minute by paying him this incentive to go away without the inquiry. And that is what the presidency conceded. And the court has, at the end, asked all of the parties to make submissions as to what should then flow from this and what the court order ought to be. And as I'm saying, we are requesting the court to say that Mr. Nxasana must be reinstated. If not, the alternative is that the deputy president, and I'll come back to the reason why, the deputy president must appoint a new NDPP within 60 days. And the reason we say that is that the president himself is conflicted in dealing with the NPA because of the charges that he faces, and therefore he cannot, in a principled, unbiased fashion, appoint anyone to the NPA whilst those charges hang over him.
And why did the High Court refer to a former prosecution's boss, Mxolisi Nxasana, as being party to a bribe?
Well, because if we argue that the agreement is unlawful, he was therefore a party to an unlawful agreement. We have argued that he was forced into an untenable position. He was facing an inquiry into his fitness. He maintained that he was fit and proper to do his job, that he was being hounded out, and in the end, he bent and he accepted the 17 million that was on the table.
All right, so all you're saying is that Mr. Nxasana be reinstated back to his position, or the Deputy President must appoint a new National Director of Public Prosecution within 60 days. But when is the verdict expected?
We don't know when judgment is expected. All the court has said is judgment will be reserved. I would imagine that we will get the judgment fairly early in the new year.
All right, Lawson, we'll leave it at that for now and wait for that verdict. Thank you so much indeed for coming through. That was Lawson Naidoo, the Executive Secretary of CASAC, talking to us about the case of the former NPA's boss, Mxolisi Nxasana. The verdict is yet to be decided, as he has said.